I'm Chad Chiniquy. This is the Hard Money Minute, sponsored by IMC Money. Today we want to chat a little bit about a seller leaseback, or renting the property back to the seller after you've already closed. You purchased the house and the seller doesn't want to move out. So it doesn't happen as often as you might think. Because primarily when you're flipping houses, a lot of the homes you're going to buy are going to be in really, really bad shape and not inhabitable. So somebody's not going to be living there. You're buying something that has holes in the roof and broken windows and, you know, smashed up kitchen and light fixtures missing and bathtub shattered and all that kind of stuff. And so somebody's probably not living in there. It does happen occasionally where you're buying a house from an older person, or you're buying a house from somebody who's lived there for a long time and they never fixed it up, but they still reside in the house and they just want to get out. You know, they lived there for 30 years and never fixed it up. That happens that happens all the time. But usually that's more cosmetic type flipping things. In other words, if somebody's been living there for 30 years, they're probably not sitting there with a huge hole in the roof, right? I mean, it could be, but anyway, let's say that you come across a situation where the seller does not want to vacate the property. They want to lease the property back. It's not the end of the world. We can do that, but I want to just warn you about a couple of things. First, the biggest thing you have to remember is if you're going to have that seller stay in the house. So you've bought the house, you've moved in, you're ready to start renovating and flip that house. Well, if the seller's in there, you can't get started, right? You can't come in and do demolition. They can't be sleeping in the bedroom when you're, taking out the tile from that was put in that house in the 1970s. You want to scrape that popcorn off the ceiling. It's not going to be too good if they got their baby sitting in a playpen and the popcorn's falling on them off the ceiling, right? You get me? So they don't want you to start the renovation, but the problem is you've already closed on your loan and you're now incurring interest and closing and carrying costs. You're in charge of all of that. Everything's associated with it. So then the seller says, well, I'll lease the property back from you and I'll pay you a lease payment. If that's going to be the case, then you want to make sure that whatever they're going to pay you from a lease standpoint is going to be enough to cover the monthly cost of the house, right? You need to be able to cover the interest-only payment, the taxes on the property, the utilities on the property, the hazard insurance on the property, just all of that sort of thing. And so if you are going to lease it back, be sure that's covered. The other thing you want to be really careful of is how long do they want to lease it? Because, okay, so you're paying a lot of money in interest. Let's say that they're willing, for the accommodation, they're willing to go ahead and rent it for more than market rents just to cover your interest and that sort of thing. That's fine, but how long are they going to be in there? And how much capital have you tied up for that property right now that prevents you from doing another deal? How much do you have tied up in that property right now? And so if the seller is not going to move out, you can only do, let's just say for the sake of discussion, you can only do one deal at a time, and the seller wants to stay for 90 days. Now you just sit on the sideline for 90 days. Unless you're getting one heck of a deal on that property, I wouldn't recommend that course of action. A better idea, let's say you got a seller who just has to stay in the property. That's fine. So let's say they wanted to stay in for 60 days. What you're going to want to do, this is the best advice I can give you. Write the offer for exactly what you want. Actually, write it for better than what you want. Like, I want to pay this much money and the seller has to be out within, the day of closing and whatever. The seller's going to probably counter and say, seller would like to lease back the property for 60 days. You counter back and say, seller can lease back the property for 30 days, but will delay closing for 30 days. So in other words, you still get the 60 days. What you should do in that situation is push the closing off a little further. Don't close today and start incurring costs and interest and tying up your capital. Push the closing off for like 30. If the seller is adamant, and he's not leaving, he or she's not leaving, they want to stay in for 60 days. Best course of action, say we'll close in 30 days, and then you move out 30 days after that. But be sure that you build in a lease payment that is at least enough to cover all of your expenses on the property. Remember, the second you sign for that loan, interest starts ticking, starts accruing. We call it freight. If you're going to pay the freight, make sure you have the money to do so. Make sure that if the tenant is going to stay in the property. The seller is going to stay in the property now as a tenant. Make sure you put it in the clause up front. As a matter of fact, what might even be better is say, okay, we'll rent the house back to you for 30 days or 60 days, but we want you to prepay the rent. Prepay the rent, have it be paid as part of closing. That would reduce your down payment money, by the way, at closing. So keep that in mind. If you're gonna do it, be sure you protect yourself. If you follow my advice and do it that way, you're gonna be much better off. So that's it for today. This has been the Hard Money Minute. I am Hard Money Chad. The show is sponsored by IMC Money, so be sure to check them out for all of your hard money needs. Remember to like me and follow me and all the stuff that you would, whatever it says to do. Like, follow, that kind of stuff. Thanks. See you next time.